And I want to share with you something so brilliant from Rabbi Shimon Schwab. Rabbi Shimon Schwab picks up on something, a one word that we say before we introduce the four sons. Baruch HaMokim. Baruch HaMokim means blessed is Hashem. HaMokim means the place. He's all over the place. So Rav Schwab asks a very interesting question. Every time we use HaMokim, either in a tefillah or when we express it to someone, it's something sad. For example, Chas v'shalom, somebody has to go to be Menachem Oval. What do we say to the Oval? Hamokim Menachem Eschem. That Hashem should comfort. If somebody loses money, it says in Shulchan Aruch, what are you supposed to say to the person? Hamokim Yemale Chasroinach. Hashem should fill your loss. When we daven Achenu, right? When we daven Achenu, what do we say? Hamokim Yerachem Aleim. Those Jews that are stuck so far away and we have no way of getting them out, Hashem should have Rachmanis. So why do we use Hamokim? You know why? Because somebody who's lost a dear one, or somebody who's lost money, or somebody who's stuck in a foreign country, he's thinking, God, where are you? How come you're not taking care of me? How could I lose this? What happened here? Where are you? So we reassure them, and we say, Hamokim. Hashem is all over. Don't worry. He'll take care of you. Don't give up. A yid shouldn't be broken. We go through difficult times, but Hamokim Yenachem, Hamokim Yemalei, Hamokim Yerachem Aleim. That's what we say. So Rav Schwab says, if that's the case, so what are we saying, Baruch HaMokim, at the Haggadah? And he says something amazing. He says there are many families where the parents or the grandparents are sitting around the Seder, and they took a look at a child. They take a look at their child or a grandchild, and they say, oh my gosh, what happened to this kid? How did he fall off the way? What happened? I thought I was going to raise heilige children, wonderful kids that are Yereim and Shleimim, and look at this kid. How did that happen? So we say to the parents, Baruch 4 times. Baruch HaMokim, Baruch Hu. Baruch Shenosan Torah L'Am Yisrael, Baruch Hu. Every child is a blessing. You don't give up on anyone. No matter what level a child has stooped down to, a boy or a girl, no matter who they're with, you can bring him back. Every child is a potential blessing. That's what the Baruch HaMokim is. It may be painful, and we have to be reassured that Hashem is going to help us, but you can't give up. You can't give up on any child. And I'll tell you an amazing statement that the Ponevezh Yerov once said. The Ponevezh Yerov once said, an orphan child is a child who has no parents. An orphaned nation is a nation that has no children. Again, an orphaned child is one that has no parents. An orphaned nation is one that has no children. Our children are our greatest investment. The greatest investment. My dear friend, the great basketball player, at least he used to be, Mr. Liss, right? Benny Marilis' father-in-law, right? So we're always talking about this, that today we're getting to be known by our children. You know, this is who they are. That's why we're choshev. That's right. That's exactly what we want. We want that our children and grandchildren should be so wonderful that people will introduce us with their father, with their father-in-law, or mother, or mother-in-law. That's really what it's all about. That's what children are. That's why we can't give up on these kids. And I'll tell you an amazing thing. Every time I go to Prague, and I've gone many, many times with many, many people on these trips, when you stand outside the Maharal Shul, there's so much to talk about the Maharal, but there were other rabbis who were Rebbeim in the Maharal Shul. One of them was the Klayakar, that famous commentary that we have on the Chumash and all the Mekrais Gedolos Chumashim. And he says something every year when I am in that shul, I quote the Klayakar. He's buried right around that area together with the Maharal and that gravesite. And he says something we should never, ever forget. He says it on the Pasuk. The Pasuk first is Bereshis Memches Yutes, but he says it on Pasuk Tezayin. We all know the story where Yaakov switched the hands by Ephraim and Menashe. And Yosef said to his father, Tata, what are you doing? You got to put your right hand on Menashe because he's the big one. And he's the older one, and Ephraim is the younger one. So you have to put your left hand on him. So what does Yaakov say? Vayimoin Aviv. The father He refused. Vayayme, he said, don't worry, Yadati b'ni Yadati. Don't worry, my son. I know what I'm doing. Gam hu yiyelahem la'am v'gam hu yigdal. Don't worry, Menashe will be great. V'ulam achiv hakotan. But the younger one, the smaller one, yigdal mimenu, he's going to be greater. Now listen to what the Klayokar says about this. He says the words that Yaakov Avinu said, Achiv hakotan yigdal mimenu, the little one will be greater. He says it doesn't just mean the one who is younger. He says there's a deep lesson. Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu boicher b'yaiser b'ktanim. Hashem picks out those children or those individuals who have something inferior about them. V'chol adam sheyesh bo tzad katnos. Any person, any child that has something that you might think is inferior, Oz b'yaiser HaKadosh Baruch Hu magbi. Hashem's going to lift this child l'shisei la'alfei ravova to make him a leader of thousands. All of us, think for a moment of your graduating class. Think of those guys and those girls that were in that class. Forget about the hairdos and forget about the clothes that they wore. But are the ones that are most successful now that we look back, those kids that we thought were going to be successful? Never. It's those kids that were sitting in the back, those kids who we thought would be nothing. Somehow they became leaders. Somehow they became great people. How did that happen? That's the ulam ochiv hakotan, and so many parents say the same thing. So many of us have children, and we thought, oh, this child, wow, he's going to be the greatest. And then it turns out that kid that you thought was going to be not so special, he's greater than all of them. How did that happen? Because Hashem is showing us what Yaakov said. Ochiv hakotan yigdal mimenu. Don't give up on any child. All of us know this in our own families, our children, extended families, and we know it in communities. That child that you thought was not going to be special turns out to be very special. You know why? Because there was a mother who loved that kid and gave him encouragement. Because there was a father or a rebbe or a friend who made that child feel special. And that's what we come at the Seder table. There's 4 kids, 4 types of kids. Everyone is a blessing. Don't give up on anyone. And I'll tell you one story, and then we'll close this part of the talk. The Bluzhever Rebbe, Rabbi Yisrael Spiro, was in the concentration camp. It was in the 1940s. And they tried to get some flour. They were able to bribe some guards, and they got some flour. And they were able to make some matzahs. And the question was, who should get the matzahs? So they went to the Rebbe. The shaila was, should the adults get it or should the children get it? So the Rebbe said, of course, the adults should get it. Because after all, they're mechuyev in the mitzvah. And if we're able to get a few matzahs, at least let's give it to those who have the obligation to do the mitzvah. So there was a widow there. A widow, Nebuch, her husband had been killed. She was taking care of a nephew and a niece in the barracks. And she came over to the Bluzhever Rebbe. And she said, Rebbe, please, I hope you don't mind. Please, I beg to differ with you. And he said, what do you mean? She said, look, none of us know who's going to get out of here. One thing I do know, that if it's the adults that get out of here alive, next year they're going to know what to do about matzah at the Seder. Because after all, they've gone through many, many Sidorim where they know what matzah is. But these kids are so vulnerable. These kids are so impressionable. If we don't give them the matzah, how are they going to know what it means to eat matzah on Pesach? Let's give them the matzah. Let's show them the Mesiras Nefesh that we have because we want them to remember what matzah is all about. And you know something? 2 things happened. One, the Rebbe said to her, you are so right, and that's what they did. They gave the children the matzah. And the second thing is, after the war, he married her. Imagine that? That was his second wife. He said, this is a woman. This is a woman who understands what children are all about. Isn't that incredible? I get the chills when I tell you this story. That's what children are all about. We can't give up on anyone. And just remember, ulam ochiv hakotan. It doesn't mean just that the younger one is going to be the greater one. It's not about age. It's about those kishroinos, those talents, those characteristics that you thought were not going to be so special. It became very special.